Your home is insured. You pay the premium every month. Your lender may require the policy, and the coverage could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if rising water enters that same home tomorrow, your insurance company may legally pay you nothing. That is because a standard homeowner's policy usually does not cover flooding. And waiting until a hurricane is approaching to buy protection may already be too late, because many flood policies come with a waiting period we will return to shortly. The confusing part is that insurance companies do cover some kinds of water damage. If a pipe suddenly bursts inside your wall and floods the kitchen, your homeowner's policy may cover the resulting damage. If wind tears open part of your roof and rain enters through that opening, some of the damage may also be covered, depending on the policy. But when water rises from the ground and moves into your home, from heavy rain, overflowing rivers, storm surge, or rapid surface runoff, that is generally treated as flooding, and flooding is normally excluded from standard homeowners insurance. So two houses could contain almost identical water damage, yet one claim might be covered while the other is denied. The difference is not necessarily what was destroyed. It is how the water entered the home. That is where separate flood insurance comes in. In the United States, homeowners can purchase flood coverage through the National Flood Insurance Program, commonly called the NFIP, or through certain private insurers. But simply saying, "I have flood insurance," does not tell you everything, because the structure of the home and the possessions inside it can be covered separately. Building coverage can protect parts of the physical house, including the foundation, electrical and plumbing systems, furnaces, water heaters, and certain permanently installed appliances. Contents coverage can protect belongings such as furniture, clothing, electronics, and some portable appliances. If you purchase only building coverage, however, you should not assume everything inside the home is protected. Your walls and electrical system might be covered, while your furniture and personal belongings are not. Under the NFIP, residential building coverage is generally available up to $250,000, while contents coverage can reach $100,000. Those limits may sound large, but they are maximums, not guarantees that every loss will be fully reimbursed. Building and contents coverage can also have separate deductibles, meaning one flood could leave you responsible for more than one deductible. Then there is the basement problem. Many homeowners assume that flood insurance protects every finished room in the house equally, but NFIP coverage is heavily restricted in basements. Essential installed equipment such as a furnace, water heater, or sump pump may qualify for coverage. Finished walls, finished floors, televisions, couches, and many other possessions kept below ground level may not. So turning a basement into an expensive home theater does not mean an NFIP policy will replace everything inside it after a flood. The location of the property inside your home matters almost as much as the type of property. And what about the car sitting in the driveway? Homeowners insurance does not normally protect your vehicle from flooding. Flood insurance generally does not protect it either. Flood damage to a vehicle is usually handled through comprehensive auto coverage. That means someone carrying only the minimum liability insurance may watch a perfectly functional car become a total loss without receiving payment for the vehicle itself. Collision coverage is not the key protection here. Comprehensive coverage is the part of an auto policy that generally handles flooding, severe weather, theft, and similar non-collision losses. But perhaps the most expensive mistake is assuming you can wait until a storm is visible on the forecast. A new NFIP flood insurance policy generally has a 30-day waiting period before coverage begins. There are exceptions, including certain policies purchased in connection with a mortgage loan, some recent flood map changes, and qualifying post-wildfire situations. Private policies may operate differently, but for many homeowners, Buying coverage 2 days before a hurricane arrives will not protect them from that hurricane. The clock does not care when the rain begins. If the policy has not become effective, the damage can occur during the waiting period and remain uncovered. This also explains why waiting until an evacuation warning is one of the worst times to investigate flood insurance. By then, some private insurers may have stopped writing new coverage in the threatened area, and an NFIP waiting period may extend far beyond the storm itself. Another common mistake is believing flood insurance is only relevant inside the darkest area on a FEMA flood map. High-risk zones deserve serious attention, and some homeowners with federally backed mortgages in those zones may be required to carry flood insurance. But a line on a map is not a wall that stops water. FEMA says roughly 40% of NFIP claims come from outside areas designated as high risk. A property can be miles from the coast and still flood because of intense rainfall, overwhelmed drainage systems, nearby construction or water flowing across ground that normally appears dry. I do not live in a flood zone often means I do not live in the highest risk flood zone. It does not mean the risk is zero. There is one final assumption that can become extremely expensive: believing the government will simply pay for everything after a major disaster. Federal disaster assistance is not a replacement for insurance. Assistance normally requires an official disaster declaration, eligibility is limited, and much of the help available may arrive as a loan that must be repaid. An insurance claim and disaster assistance are not the same financial protection. So before storm season reaches its worst point, ask 4 specific questions. Does your homeowner's policy exclude rising water and surface flooding? Do you have both building and contents coverage? What restrictions apply to your basement and belongings? And on what exact date would a new policy become effective? Your home can be insured and still contain an enormous coverage gap. The worst time to discover that gap is when the water is already at the door.